Monday, when the final stage of COVID restrictions is going to be lifted, masks will, as we all know, no longer be mandatory in most indoor places.
Many will expect the relaxation of the rules to extend to tubes and trains. But in London, the Mayor Sadiq Khan says that won't be the case because today he announces that passengers travelling in and around the capital will still have to wear a face mask unless they are exempt. He joins us now. Very good morning to you, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you this morning. And you are going against the sort of flow of the lifting of restrictions, aren't you? I think you're making absolutely the right decision. I think that masks in enclosed spaces are the right way forward. But it's going to be tough, isn't it, if you want to enforce it now that the law is being lifted?
Oh, good morning. It's good to join you both. Look, the evidence we know is actually wearing a face cover and a face mask indoors where you can't keep your social distance reduces the chances of transmission of this virus. We also know 1 out of 3 of us who may have the virus won't have any symptoms. And it's one of the most unselfish things that you can do wearing a face mask. Now, look, the government, for their own reasons, have decided from Monday it will no longer be obligatory across the country, a national requirement. I'm quite clear, both in relation to public safety, but also public reassurance. I think it's important for us to continue to make it a requirement to wear a face mask on our services. What we're going to do is, because we haven't got the national legislation behind us, we're going to make it what's called a condition of carriage. So if you want to use our services, one of the conditions is, unless you're exempt or got a very good reason, you've got to wear a face covering. If you don't, you won't be allowed on any of our buses or tubes or other services. If you're already on one of our services and you don't put the mask on, you'll be asked to leave.
Okay, well, who's going to enforce this? I mean, the British Transport Police, the bus driver? I mean, this is the key question. Just as an anecdotal piece of information for you, one of our senior producers gets the tube home after each programme. He's saying that roughly a third of passengers on the tube are not wearing masks now. About 5 out of 15 in his carriage yesterday weren't wearing the mask. So who's going to make them?
One of the reasons I was keen to announce this today and not on Monday was because people, the anecdotal evidence you referred to is that people have stopped wearing the face mask with the expectation it's no longer going to be required on Monday. The good news is, Richard, the evidence is from the survey work we've done, 86% of our passengers are wearing face masks. Of the 14% who aren't, 2/3 are either exempt or have a good reason. We have hundreds of TfL enforcement officers, and they've, over the last year, since it was compulsory last June, had more than 212,000 conversations with Londoners. That's led to 13,000 Londoners not being allowed entry. That's led to, roughly speaking, 4,000 being asked to leave, and it's also led to 4,000 fixed penalty notices. So I'm confident that actually Londoners will do the right thing. Those visiting our city will understand, and that's one of the reasons I'm on today. If you want to use public transport in London, the rules are you've got to wear a face mask.
But the point is that at the moment it is the law and you can't enforce it. You know, I was on the tube the other day, half of the carriage not wearing face masks.
Really?
Half the carriage is not wearing face masks. And that is while it is enshrined in legislation. That's now being downgraded to condition of carriage, as you say. I don't know how you're going to enforce it when currently it's not being enforced.
Look, I'm not going to pretend this is a perfect solution. What would have been ideal would have been for the government, yes, to reopen society and our economy from Monday, but to continue with some of these really important safeguards that address both public safety and public reassurance. So this is an imperfect solution. The good news is that we've got hundreds of enforcement officers. We are working on, Susanna, passing a bylaw to make it the law as well. I'm not sure if you're aware, but drinking alcohol on any of our services is not allowed. That's also a condition of carriage. And the good news is very, very few people drink alcohol on our services. So I'm confident, by and large, Londoners will do the right thing. One of the reasons I was on today is because actually, Susanna, what's happened is some people wrongly think it's no longer a requirement to wear a face covering and have taken it on. Yeah. The experience we have from our team is actually a lot of people have their face mask in their purse or in their pocket and have forgotten to put it on. Some don't wear it properly. Others who, when they about to get into a bus or going to a station, realise they need one, will just pop to the shop and get one. And so, look, the vast majority of people will do the right thing. If there's a small minority who are being very selfish, we'll take action.
Well, let's look at that small minority, then let's face up to it, because you are going to have some issues here. Let's say you've got some spotty Herbert on the bus who just won't put his mask on. He's refusing, he's being stroppy about it, he's swearing, he's being rude. What happens? Does the bus driver stop the bus and refuse to carry on? Does he call for backup? I mean, how is that scenario playing out?
Well, if somebody's been abusive and violent, I'd encourage passengers not to approach that person. What the staff will do is contact either British Transport Police or the Met Police Service. We must not allow any of our staff to be abused or the victims of assault. We protect our staff. What we have is TfL enforcement officers whose job is to enforce the conditions of carriage, to enforce the rules. They'll be there, and what it's saying to our staff is to make sure you don't put yourself at risk. What we've done, Richard, over the last 2 weeks, once the government announced the roadmap next stage, we've been talking to not just the government, not just to other public transport providers, but our trade unions who represent our workers, as well as Londoners and businesses as well. And all the evidence I've had from speaking to people, but also independent polling, is people want face masks to continue to be compulsory.
Yeah, there is, as you say, a majority support for face masks to continue. Let's talk about what happened at Wembley on Sunday night, because frankly, there were disgusting scenes. And there's a lot of criticism of the security at Wembley Stadium. And, no disrespect to the individual stewards who, frankly, from what I experienced on Wednesday night, not on Sunday night, but on Wednesday night, they had a really tough job, and we can see them there. I mean, how on earth do two stewards standing at the bottom of that flight of stairs deal with all of those people who are going through the barriers? What questions are you asking about what went wrong?
Well, firstly, I think all of us must condemn unequivocally those hooligans, behaving the way they did. The FA are rightly conducting a review. The Met Police Service are taking part in the review, as indeed we are, and others, to find out what went wrong. It's really important that action is taken, and the Met Police Service have reassured me they're now viewing the CCTV footage, they're viewing body-worn videos to make sure action is taken. 86 arrests have already been made. You saw those poor stewards. 19 police officers on Sunday were assaulted by these so-called fans in London, not just outside Wembley, Leicester Square, Liverpool Street, other parts of our city.
Mr. Mayor, a lot of people looked at those pictures, particularly of Wembley and of Leicester Square, and said, how come a peaceful vigil for a murdered woman on the streets of London resulted in so much police action, but those scenes of drunken hooliganism in Leicester Square and outside Wembley did not result in the same level of police action? The contrast was stark.
Well, it's a matter of public record, my views of the police at Clapham Common when that vigil took place. The police, though, have a really invidious job. They've got to act proportionally. On this weekend, I can tell you, there were thousands and thousands of police officers working incredibly hard. There was surveillance from overhead, surveillance from CCTV cameras, working closely with British Transport Police to avoid troublemakers coming to London. There was more than a 25% increase in passengers coming into London from outside London, 80,000 additional people. The police had a really difficult job. By and large, they did a good job, but there are questions that need to be asked. And the Met Police Service, to give them credit, are saying, you know what, could we have done things better? What went wrong, but also they're taking action by viewing the CCTV to make sure those responsible
for
any criminal activity are actually taken against them.
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, yes, sure, there have to be prosecutions here, but it is, stable doors and bolting horses and all of that. As Susanna says, were there enough police there? Clearly there weren't. And I think it moves on to leadership, doesn't it? And the Met Commissioner, Cressida Dix, her contract's up for renewal, it's up for extension. You have a say in that. A lot of people are saying this is yet another black mark against her, that she didn't organise proper policing of our national stadium on an international night. Will you be supporting her in the job to continue?
Well, there's a number of issues you raised there. Firstly, look, there were thousands of police officers working incredibly hard this weekend. We shouldn't denigrate or undo the great work the vast majority did.
We understand
Some
that,
of them were overrun by the numbers of hooligans breaking the law. There is a review taking place into what went wrong on Sunday, involving not just the police, the FA councils, the GLA and others as well, because we've got to make sure lessons are learned. The Commission's got my full confidence. The police work incredibly hard, and it's really important that they have the support not just of myself, but others too.
Should Cressida Dix get an extension of her contract? Do you have confidence in her?
I do have confidence in her. She's not applied yet. She's not decided whether she's going to apply for an extension. Her contract carries on until next year, but I have confidence in the leadership of the Met Police Service.
Do you think that she's had a good record as a commissioner?
Well, I think she's doing a really tough job. I mean, she's the leader of the most scrutinised police service in the world, rightly so. It should be scrutinised. A lot of the issues that members of the public have predate both my mayoralty and this commissioner being the commissioner. It's really important, though, that all of us have the humility to recognise when things go wrong and to make sure lessons are learned.
Just before we let you go, Sadiq Khan, really important issue that's we've been discussing, the abuse of the black footballers in particular after the defeat on Sunday. You know what it is like to experience racism and abuse online. What one thing could the social media companies do? Because we talk about it all the time, and yet action doesn't get taken. What is the one thing they could do? Would it be to remove anonymity for those online?
They can invest in algorithms to take down racist abuse. It's quite clear an emoji of a banana or a orangutan. It has one purpose in the context of the last 48 hours. They can, if they haven't got the algorithm, invest in staff to spot the racist stuff and take it off. They can ban these people from their platform. They can give the details of these people to the police so criminal prosecutions can be taken. They can make sure that algorithms aren't amplifying these hateful messages. But I tell you this, Susanna, whether racism is online, on the stands, or on our streets is unacceptable. And what we need are our leaders to show support and solidarity when our players are taking the knee to make a stand, metaphorically speaking, against racism, not to condone those who are booing our players. I think what you've seen over the last 48 hours, and Dexter was great, by the way. I'm glad he's running for number 10, not City Hall. What we've seen over the last 48 hours is a backlash against the backlash, which is so lovely to see, but it can't be right that these young men, the Sakas, the Rashfords and the Sanchos, have this sort of racism. I tell you this, the reason why our players took the knee is because the black players experienced this regularly before the penalties, and people like Harry Maguire, Harry Kane, Gareth Southgate showed solidarity. They're not Marxists. They don't want to defund the police. They want their mates not to suffer racial abuse.
And one more question on social media. Do you think that anonymity should be evaporated, and should people who register to use Twitter or any of the social media sites have to give their personal details in confidence, unless they do something wrong, to the network suppliers?
Absolutely. Whether it's a bot farm, whether it's individuals in the basements of their mum's house putting out this stuff, the problem with social media is it amplifies the hate. If somebody writes me a hateful, racist letter, only that person and I see it. But the platform allows that hater, the racist, to have their message amplified. And the problem with that is, Richard, it gives the impression of normalising these sorts of views. And if you normalise a view and you have it in the mainstream, it gives people false courage and succour. And we've got to make sure that we condemn unequivocally the racism, but have action taken. If you speak to the Sterlings and the Rashfords and the Sanchos and the Sakas, obviously they're pleased that there's a backlash against the backlash. They want action. And it's really important when the season resumes, Susanna, when our players take the knee when the season resumes, we applaud them rather than booing them.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say on that, one of our players, Wilfried Zaha, doesn't take the knee because his point is it has to result in action. There has to be action. So there are certain black players who, say it needs to actually result in something. So, it's important to respect that view as well. But I think you're absolutely right. This sort of false link to defunding the police and Marxism is just a
well, that's been swept aside by what's happened, isn't it?
Absolutely right. Sadiq Khan, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Stay safe.
Thank you.